Hello everyone, and welcome to the first part to my Super Smash Bros. 6 prediction series, or should I say ideas series. The Smash series is notoriously unpredictable to say the least, and we're talking about some imaginary game here, so it may be a bit much to call these predictions. Smash 6 in particular I don't expect to release anytime soon anyway. Although the fact that Ultimate is now over 4 years old, I think it's at least worth considering what's next for the series. Which goes to explain what I'm doing with these videos. I'm mostly just going over various ideas that I would expect or at least would like to see in a likely eventual sequel. For this video, I was originally going to make it on all possible characters, but there ended up being a lot more that I wanted to talk about than I expected, so I'll be splitting the characters topic across multiple parts. With this video in particular, I'm going to be discussing various newcomers to the series that I think are deserving to become fighters. I do need to stress though that for this series, I'm just going to be sticking with first party characters and properties. I will probably go into more depth with third parties in a later, separate video, but I think it would just be a lot more simple if I leave it out for now. Especially with Ultimate, for instance, third parties are just a bit too inconsistent to have a good grasp on. There's just far too large of a pool of characters to draw from anyway. And besides, I've always seen Smash as primarily a Nintendo crossover series first and foremost, so I hope I'm not bothering anyone too much by omitting external properties. That all said and done, and I know I've blabbered on a bit, for this video I'm going to be going through every Nintendo series in order and list various characters that I think would be fitting for Smash. So without further ado, let's jump into the Mario series. The obvious choice would be Waluigi, especially after all the riots during Ultimate. I know people are very against his inclusion, but he is a very popular character, definitely more well known than a majority of characters in Smash. Waluigi also has the benefit of being able to represent a side of Mario that hasn't been represented by a character yet, being the spin-off side, due to how Waluigi is really only prominent in the side games. His moveset would incorporate elements from these games, primarily the Party, Sports, and Kart series. The focus should be on the Tennis series however, as that's where he debuted, and also it's how he's already represented in Smash via the Assist Trophy. Using a tennis racket as melee attacks and possibly tennis balls as projectiles would be fitting, but other sports equipment could work too, such as golf clubs and baseball bats. He could use a kart or motorbike from the Mario Kart series for a side special like Wario. His general style and demeanor could be based off his appearance in games like the Mario Strikers series, Mario Power Tennis, and Mario Tennis Aces. Next up would be Paper Mario. I've included them in the same vein as Waluigi in terms of representation. This time around, Paper Mario would represent the RPG side of the Mario series, primarily the Paper Mario games. His main melee attacks would be the hammer, of course, of which just that alone there is a lot to work with. Just for instance, you could bring in the paint attack from Color Splash. Also, the fire and ice flower projectiles could be fitting. Using party members within the moveset could be very interesting, say using a bomb attack, a shell throw, or possibly utilizing the pixels from Super Paper Mario, such as Thoru as a grab, however you pronounce that. There's a lot to work with from the series, whether that be the old or the new games, and that's not even mentioning the possibility of bringing in elements from the Mario and Luigi series into his moveset, say from Paper Jam in particular. Unfortunately, to any of the middle-aged Nintendo fans out there, Geno has definitely missed his chance to make it into Smash. He could have been interesting, but Paper Mario is ultimately more fitting to represent the RPG games. For Donkey Kong, this is obvious, it's a no-brainer. Dixie Kong is always one of the first characters that come to mind when I think of deserving first-party characters. That said, outside of her using her hair in her attack, say for the dash attack or recovery, I don't know what you could really do to differentiate her from Diddy Kong, but the Smash series has never been afraid to reuse movesets anyway, so I don't think it really matters. The Zelda series is in dire need of a new character. A character I always see being thrown around is Impa. I'm mixed on her personally, I don't mind her, and I especially like her appearance in Age of Calamity. It's just we already have Sheik in the game, and if we're gonna finally get a new character after however long, for it to be another Sheikah character that's really only prominent in cutscenes, it would be very underwhelming for me. That said, she is a lot better to represent the series than Sheik is, so I think it would be fine to have her be a replacement for Sheik, although I don't know if that's ruffling any feathers. Her moves would be primarily based on the Hyrule Warriors games plus the cutscenes from Skyward Sword. Another character could be Skull Kid, being a very iconic Nintendo villain. I think it'd be a really great choice for Smash, and his potential moveset would stand out from the rest of the cast. Most of his moveset should be based on the final boss, being Majora itself and its various forms. Other elements could be taken from other Skull Kids from the rest of the series, like in Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, specifically the use of musical wind instruments, like his moveset in Hyrule Warriors actually. However, beyond everyone else, my personal choice for a character would be Midna, specifically Midna and Wolflink. She is one of the more popular characters from the series, and her inclusion could result in a very unique fighter. The standard attacks would be primarily focused on the wolf combat in Twilight Princess, whereas the special attacks would incorporate magic attacks from Midna herself, including her hand ability, which would work great as a grab, and the Fuse Shadow transformation would be a great final smash. After playing Metroid Dread, I have to say I'd love to see Ravenbeak as a fighter in Smash. Even his one boss fight has enough material to make a great character. It's like he was made for Smash in mind. A lot of animations and attacks could be taken directly from that fight. Notably, he also has projectiles, stun moves, dash attacks, and a recovery with his wings, of course, all at the ready. I also just really like his design. He's just a super cool looking final boss. That said, there is that whole issue that he only appears in one Metroid game, so whether or not he would be a good fit to represent the Metroid series as a whole is something to question. In that sense, it would possibly be better to include Psylocke instead, if and only if he is included as a major character in Metroid Prime 4. This is more of a character in theory, really. If Smash 6 were to materialize this instant, then absolutely not, because you'd really only be basing his moveset from Hunters, which would be the absolute most boring character ever. Now for Kirby, especially after Piranha Plant, I don't really see any issue with including Bandana Waddle Dee anymore. He is pretty much the fourth main character of the series these days, especially with Forgotten Land, where he's the only other playable character than Kirby. Having the big four Kirby characters all finally be playable would be nice. That said, his moveset would be kinda boring. I don't know what you could do with him to make him that interesting, but really, not every character needs to fire on all cylinders. It'd be nice to have just one simple character, and even so, his small stature and use of a spear would be enough to make him stand out anyway. If I'd had to choose another Kirby character, which there's definitely a lot to choose from, the modern Kirby series in particular is starved for any content in Smash, I'd go with a villain. Magala or Marx would be my top two choices. Marx isn't really from the modern games, but whatever. For Star Fox would obviously be Crystal. I've always thought she would be a very fitting character to represent the Star Fox series, mostly because she would actually stand out and be different from the other three Star Fox fighters who are all clones of one another. She would primarily use her staff to attack, like as seen with her appearance as an assist trophy. Her moveset in general should be based on Star Fox adventures. The Pokemon series is a bit of a tough one to talk about. Well, okay, maybe it's a bit of a personal thing. But what I mean is that the Gen 8 and especially Gen 9 Pokemon designs are complete arse, so I don't want to actively suggest any new Pokemon for Smash. We could look back into some older unrepresented gens, say 3 and 5. Sceptile in particular would have been a great choice during Smash 4's DLC to market for Auras, but we got Corrin instead. I still think it'd be pretty good though, considering the lack of a standalone grass starter. For Gen 5, I remember a lot of people throwing around the idea of Zoroark, but I do think it's missed its chance by now. I really fail to imagine Zoroark of all Pokemon being included as a playable character these days. So, I'd say more than likely what's going to happen, unless it's going to be a Lucario situation where it's based on the anime. Following the trends of the previous games, the next Pokemon will be a final evolution starter of the most recent Pokemon gen. Considering that we've had a water type and then fire, it's only natural that the next one will be grass, so I'm begrudgingly going to include Meowscarada from Scarlet and Violet. And well, conveniently, that's probably the one I would have gone for anyway, of the three, considering we don't need another heavy fire starter, and the water one is an abomination, and besides, it could be a little interesting as it's sort of magician archetype anyway. That said, I don't think Smash 6 will come out before Gen 10 or even 11, possibly, so I really doubt this would happen. They'd probably just opt to using the most recent starter. The only thing I could say for Earthbound is the possibility of seeing Ninten as an echo for Ness. Otherwise, we could see a non-protagonist such as Porky, but I really wouldn't expect any more characters from the series, to be honest. Similar to Earthbound, I can't imagine any more F-Zero characters due to the dormant state of the series, but I think it could be possible to include, say, Black Shadow as an echo to Captain Falcon. But yeah, just make him a little slower and more heavy-hitting, maybe with some darker, more evil powers instead of the fire, like some purple aura. Wait a second. For Fire Emblem? Well, I don't think we really need any more, surely, right? Either way, if we had to get a new one, which, let's be honest, it's going to happen, it could be the main protagonist of Engage, Aaliyah. I'm not too sure about their moveset, but hey, if Chrom can appear in Robin's final smash, then I'm sure it would be fine for Aaliyah to summon Fire Emblem characters in their moveset, or something. I don't know. Maybe we could get an older character like Lyn or someone, but you know what, and I'm sure not many people are going to disagree with me here, but I would rather just give this series a bit of a break for now. Anyway, next, Kid Icarus. A bit of a weird one, to be honest, considering it's not like this is an ongoing series or anything like that. Even ignoring Pit because, yeah, technically he had a moveset before Uprising, if we were to include a new fighter, there would be 3 entire characters based on one game. Not just that, but one pretty old and relatively niche one too. I'd love to include a new character, but only if the series was more active, as in just one more game or something. But hey, this is my character ideas video, so I get to be biased. For some reason, I remember people wanting Magnus at the time, but he's kinda boring. My personal choice would be Viridi, who was definitely one of the best characters from that game. She would be very similar to Palutena in the sense that you'd have to make up most of her moveset. Actually, at least Palutena had a boss fight, and a few things like her up smash was taken from it, so like with Palutena, you could give her a bunch of different items and abilities that Pit uses in Uprising for her moveset, and her moveset in general could be pretty samey to Palutena. You could also incorporate some ideas from the whole forces of nature shtick, like having her attacks be based on maybe plant life or something. Medusa is also a possibility as an antagonist type of character. I could have imagined her working as a clone or echo of Palutena. For WarioWare, Ashley, obviously. She is a fan favorite character. She would incorporate her witch abilities and powers in her moveset, taking them mostly from her appearances in cutscenes, Game & Wario, Get It Together, and I guess her assist trophy. Of course, she would use basic magic projectiles and her flying broom for a recovery. That said, you'd probably have to be creative with the rest of it, but that's certainly not the first time for the series. Unless Pikmin 4 ends up being some radically different game from the rest of the series, I'm not gonna give any new characters for Pikmin. That said, I'd love to see all playable characters from the series, including Louie, Charlie, and Brittany as playable characters, acting as different skins like with Alf. The Animal Crossing series is already pushing it with a 2 in Smash already, but if I had to go with one more, I'd include KK Slider. He could use music and his guitar for attacks, and Elma from Xenoblade X could have been interesting, but that game's kinda old now, so I think it would be more likely to see a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 character. I'm thinking Noah, because he's the protagonist. I haven't played the game yet, so Also, I want to suggest Rex because it's weird that the main character from the second game isn't playable, but I assume Pyra and Mithra substitute for him more than enough anyway. Let me know if there's anyone more fitting for Smash. This is probably the Nintendo series I'm least familiar with, to be honest. For Splatoon, I've seen a bunch of people bring up Octoling as a possible echo for Inkling. Honestly, you could even probably give them a completely new moveset, utilizing the weapons and sub-weapons from Splatoon 2 and 3, which are absent in Inkling's moveset. And finally, Arms, which, well, I don't think Arms needs a new character. However, if I had to go with one, I'd just be really basic and go with Springman as well as Ribbon-Gill as a skin swap, possibly as an echo or clone of Min-Min. Mostly just because they're the main marketed characters. I'm not gonna call Springman the protagonist, but it's definitely portrayed as one. But yeah, just sticking to Min-Min would be fine. For new series, we could have Isaac from Golden Sun. I know Golden Sun is a decomposed corpse by this point, but it's one of Nintendo's most notable franchises without a playable character. As with Xenoblade, I'm not too familiar with Golden Sun, but if his moveset is anything like his assist trophy, then I think his inclusion is more than justified. But at least Golden Sun has some content in Smash, as little as it may be. Rhythm Heaven has to be, with the exception of one game I'll get to in a moment, Nintendo's largest and most popular franchise that is completely absent in Smash. So I think it's more than deserving of a character, especially if we could eventually get a Switch Rhythm Heaven game. Karate Joe would be the obvious pick, as is in all Rhythm Heaven games. It would be interesting to see how you could adapt rhythm gameplay into a fighting moveset, whether it would even be feasible to do something like that, say, matching the attacks with the tempo of the background music, or probably just ditching that idea altogether. Either way, I would dig Karate Joe. Chibi Robo from... I'm forgetting the name of the series is from. I'm sure it'll come back to me. I wish the series wasn't killed off the way it was, but having Chibi Robo as a playable character could suffice, I suppose. His moveset has some good potential, mostly bringing in elements like his gadgets from the first 2 games, not to mention his Ziplash ability, of course. Nintendo's largest franchise that isn't brain training or whatever that doesn't have a character in Smash is Ring Fit Adventure. I think, well, the game on its own has sold 15 million units, which is crazy. So I think Ring Fit Adventure Trainer or Ring Fit Trainee would be an interesting character. I don't think they would be as gimmicky as Wii Fit Trainer, considering it's a pseudo RPG anyway. This might be a bit of a stretch, but I'd love to see Saki from Sin of Punishment. It's another unrepresented franchise, although this one is the most dead of the ones I've mentioned. So unfortunately he may have to just stick as an assist trophy. Oh wait, they cut that assist trophy, didn't they? Huh. Akira Howard from Astral Chain would be a very suitable character for Smash, mostly because Astral Chain is an action game. So you wouldn't have to strain too hard to think about a possible moveset. Having a stand in the moveset like with Joker would be cool. For possible retro reps, for me it's a toss up between two. The first is Muck Rider, who was previously considered for Smash actually. He could probably work as a clone of Captain Falcon, but also incorporate his motorbike in his moveset as well as gun projectile based attacks to reflect his original game. Tagamaru, however, is the easy, no-brainer go-to retro character. The mysterious Murasame Castle is a pretty big Famicom release, in Japan of course, so I think it's about time he becomes playable. And finally, for my last character idea, I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but I would love to see this nonetheless. Taboo from Smash Brawl to become playable would be the best thing ever. It's very unlikely and absolutely no one wants him, but shut up. Well, I've definitely glossed over quite a bit, and I'm sure you guys could list off about 400 different first-party characters I've missed. Hell, I could go on more if I wanted to, but there has to be a limit. For the final release of Smash 6, there's not even going to be close to this many newcomers anyway, so listing any more would be in vain. For my next video, I'm going to look backwards at the veterans in Smash and see how they could be possibly improved or updated for the following release. So be sure to stick around until then if you're interested. Otherwise, thanks for watching.